Since the dawn of time, there have been many bizarre occurrences and disasters throughout the world. Many of these disasters were inevitable, but some are very hard to explain or have not been explained to this day. Many of these bizarre scenarios happened just because of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and some were man-made blunders. From a group of Russian hikers being ripped out of their tents in the middle of the night, to an island that lost nearly its whole population in a volcano, today we are going to go over 6 examples of some of the most bizarre disasters to ever occur. The Tunguska Event. The Tunguska Event was a massive explosion that happened in a remote region in Siberia on June 30th, 1908. It is considered the largest impact event on Earth in recorded history, and no one knows for sure what happened. It occurred in a very remote region with very few people nearby other than small groups of indigenous hunters. Most scientists believe it was most likely caused by a massive meteor, asteroid, or comet that entered Earth's atmosphere but never collided with the planet, instead exploding in the sky. That day, a fireball shot across the sky and exploded in the atmosphere above present-day Krasnoyarsk Krai, Russia, once known as the Tunguska River. 80 million trees over 830 square miles were ripped out from the ground and flattened. Wildlife died in huge quantities. Modern supercomputers calculate the impact at 15 megatons, which for comparison is 1,000 times greater than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima in World War II. Assuming the crater was caused by an impact from space, the estimated size would be up to 70 meters in diameter. The impact caused a seismic wave and lit the sky above Siberia for several days. The sound of its impact was heard about 600 miles away, and the overall power knocked people and livestock physically off their feet. The incident remains the source of much controversy and wild theories, ranging from an encounter with a black hole, antimatter testing, or even a UFO attack have been thrown out there. Some theories suggest that there was in fact no rock because no fragments of it were ever found. You'd think an asteroid that big would at least have some fragments. Another theory suggests that it could be a possible explosion from the escape of methane gas from underground. Amazingly, there were no recorded trips to Tunguska until 13 years after the explosion, as it was in a very isolated region, and most of these photos are taken over 20 years after it occurred, still showing extreme damage in the impacted areas. Wherever the truth is behind this event, it still thrills the imagination of Russians and is a tourist attraction for those bold enough to make it to the Tunguska area. The Dyatlov Pass Incident. In late January 1959, a group of experienced skiers and hikers set out on a voyage across the northern Ural Mountains. Led by Igor Dyatlov, the goal of the expedition was to reach the mountain of Utertan. Everything was going as planned for the group of 9, until they lost their direction and deviated west towards the top of a nearby mountain. Dyatlov quickly realized the mistake and set up camp on the slope of the mountain, intending to backtrack the following day. They never made it back, and when they did not send a telegraph as expected, a massive manhunt was called for to search for them. The lifeless bodies of all 9 people were mysteriously found spread over a large area on the pass. There have been multiple books written about the incident, and even a movie in 2013 called Devil's Pass that replays the ordeal this group of young men and women had to go through them that evening. The area was named Dyatlov Pass for Igor Dyatlov in his honor after the incident. When the bodies were finally located, many abnormalities were discovered. There was evidence that the group fled their tents in the middle of the night as they were ripped out from within. All deaths were thought to be from hypothermia until autopsies were performed. 4 of the hikers were determined to have died from a force that could not have been inflicted by another human. They had chest and head trauma equivalent to a high-speed car crash. Rustin Stolbaum's body, discovered by the Soviet authorities, was found buried in the snow face down. Some were wearing each other's clothes, missing eyes. One victim even had no tongue, and significant amounts of radioactive contamination was found on their clothing. As the Soviet Union was in the middle of the Cold War, the story was kept secret. The files were not made public, and the final diagnosis was that the deaths were caused by an unknown compelling force. Many have speculated that the tragedy was the result of military testing, an unexplained UFO encounter, or a mysterious Yeti-like creature. No one has really been able to figure out what happened and still remains a mystery to this day. What do you think happened? Could it have been a Yeti-like creature, a UFO encounter, or just a massive snowstorm that destroyed their tents in the middle of the night? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. The Station Nightclub Fire. A horrific freak accident happened in 2003 in West Warwick, Rhode Island at the Station nightclub. The headlining band Great White was beginning their set for the night, and seconds into their opening song, Desert Moon, pyrotechnics set off by the tour manager caught fire on both sides of the stage and the top of the drums. The flames were initially thought to be part of the act. Only as the fire reached the ceiling and smoke began to bank down did people realize it was uncontrolled. 20 seconds after the pyrotechnics ended, the band stopped playing and lead vocalist Jack Russell calmly remarked into the microphone, "Wow, that's not good." In less than a minute, the entire stage was engulfed in flames, with most of the band members and entourage fleeing for the west exit by the stage. Fast-moving fire with intense black smoke engulfed the club within a few minutes. It was especially intense because of the polyurethane foam that instantly develops dense, aggressive, dark smoke, poisonous carbon monoxide, and hydrogen cyanide gas when burning. Inhaling the smoke only a couple times can cause rapid loss of consciousness and then death by internal suffocation. Video footage of the fire shows its ignition, rapid growth, and the billowing smoke that quickly made escape impossible, and the exit blockage that further hindered evacuation. You can see from the image that there were 4 exits, but everyone rushed to the front main exit where they entered and caused a huge logjam. The ensuing stampede led to a crush in the narrow hallway leading to the main exit, blocking the exit completely and resulting in numerous deaths and injuries among the attendees and staff. Among those who passed away in the fire were Great White's lead guitarist Ty Longley and the show's MC DJ Mike Gonzalez. The toxic smoke, heat, and the stampede of people towards the exit took 100 casualties and another 230 were injured. Numerous people were trampled to their death as a huge pile of individuals formed in the front exit. Many of the survivors developed PTSD as a result of all the psychological trauma of the incident. Out of 462 people in attendance, 340 were injured or killed. The St. Pierre Snake Invasion. St. Pierre is a beautiful small city located on the French Caribbean island of Martinique. In January of 1902, Mount Pelée, the volcano located right next to St. Pierre, began to show an increase in activity, and yellow sulfur vapors started to rise out of the volcano. Even with this abrupt increase in activity, the public did not show much concern. This was until a few months later on April 23rd, when small explosions began to shake the mountain at the summit of the volcano. Over the next few days, St. Pierre was rocked by earth tremors, covered in ash, and completely engulfed in a thick cloud of hazardous sulfurous gas. These terrible conditions kept growing worse as the city and surrounding villages were hit by snakes and ground insects, driven from their homes on the slopes of Mount Pelée by the ash falls and tremors. Horses, pigs, and dogs shouted in terror as red ants and foot-long centipedes crawled up their legs and bit them. Thousands of poisonous snakes also cascaded off the mountain. An estimated 50 people, mostly children, died by the snake bites, along with about 200 animals. As the eruptions intensified, a large volcanic mudflow began and buried everything in its path, killing 23 workers at a rum distillery down the river. After the initial eruption, living near the volcano became a huge danger and stress. Many people considered leaving St. Pierre. A few days after this initial disaster, the governor, Louis Motit, received a report from civic leaders and a scientist who climbed the volcano that said, "There is nothing in the activity of Mount Pelée that warrants a departure from St. Pierre. The safety of St. Pierre is completely assured." This report greatly eased the public's concerns, but what they failed to notice was a V-shaped notch at the top of the volcano pointed directly at St. Pierre. Some people left St. Pierre, but only the wealthy were able to afford to leave. Even more crazy is that after the reassuring articles in the newspaper, many people from the countryside flocked to St. Pierre, thinking that it was the safest place to be. The population actually increased by a few thousand people, up to 28,000. There was an election scheduled for May 11th, but it would never be, as horror struck again May 8th that same year, less than 1 month since the last eruption. A large black cloud filled with superheated gas, ash, and rock cascaded down the mountain at 100 miles per hour. In less than 1 minute, it struck St. Pierre with hurricane force. Thick masonry walls were blown into rubble, and metal supports were mangled into twisted strands. The intense heat of the cloud started huge bonfires. Thousands of barrels of rum stored in the city's warehouses exploded, sending rivers of boiling liquids through the streets and into the sea. The cloud continued to advance over the harbor, where it destroyed at least 20 ships anchored offshore. The hurricane force of the blast capsized a steamship and set ablaze an American sailing ship nearby, killing most of their passengers and crew. The The sailing ship had the misfortune of arriving only a few hours before the eruption. Those on board could only watch in terror as the plume of smoke shot towards them after annihilating the city of St. Pierre. Of the approximately 28,000 people in St. Pierre, only 2 known survivors were ever found. One of them was in solitary confinement after stabbing a police officer and survived but was terribly burned after the explosion. He was pardoned of all his crimes and became a circus attraction afterwards. The city of St. Pierre was never fully restored, but some villages were built decades after in their place. As of the 2013 census, 4,344 people still brave living in the city to this day. The Great Chicago Fire. This is an infamous event that took place in Chicago between October 8th and 10th in 1871. Now, there are numerous theories on how this event took place, but I will first lay out the facts and then talk about potential theories that are the most plausible. The fire began at about 9 p.m. on October 8th in or around a small barn belonging to the O'Leary family. The fire's spread was aided by the city's use of wood as the main building material. More than 2/3 of the structures in Chicago at the time were made entirely of wood. Most houses also were topped with highly flammable tar or shingle roofs. All the city's sidewalks and many roads were even made of wood. The city and the Midwest were also under a serious drought at the time, only receiving 1 inch of rain in the past 3 months. The fire department only had 185 firefighters with just 17 horse-drawn steam engines to protect the entire city. The initial response was quick, but because of an error by the watchman, the firefighters were sent to the wrong place, giving the small barn fire a bigger time window to expand and grow. By the time the firefighters had finally arrived at DeCoven Street, the fire had spread to neighboring buildings and was progressing towards the central business district. The firefighters strongly hoped that the Chicago River could stop the fire from reaching the heart of the city, but there were numerous coal yards, barges, and bridges, combined with the very high winds that day, to allow debris from the fire to jump the river and bring flames to the other side. The fire burned for over 2 days, and after the burning stopped, about 300 people were dead and 1/3 of the city's 300,000 population were left homeless. It destroyed 73 miles of roads, 120 miles of sidewalks, 17,000 buildings, and $222 million in property damage, which was about 1/3 of the city's value at the time. Many cities like New York, St. Louis, and individuals and corporations stepped in to donate money, food, clothing, and other goods to help in the relief effort. City officials never determined the exact cause of the blaze. The most popular story about the fire is that the family cow kicked over the lantern as Mrs. O'Leary was milking her. The O'Leary family denied this, stating that they were in bed before the fire started. Stories spread quick about the cow across the city. O'Leary served as a perfect scapegoat, a poor Irish Catholic immigrant, and there was strong anti-Irish sentiment at the time throughout the U.S. Michael Ahern, the Chicago Republican reporter who wrote the cow and lantern story, admitted in 1893 that he made it up because he thought it would make colorful news. However, the story became part of Chicago folklore. The Chicago City Council even officially exonerated them and the cow in 1997. Some theories about the fire are Daniel Sullivan, who first reported the fire, ignited hay in the barn while trying to steal milk. His claim was that he was across the street and saw the fire coming, so he let the animals out of the barn. Another theory is that Lewis Cohn may have started the fire during a craps game. According to Cohn, on the night of the fire, he was gambling in the O'Leary's barn with one of their sons and some neighborhood boys, when Mrs. O'Leary came out to the barn and chased the kids away at around 9 p.m., and they may have knocked over a lantern in their flight. Another theory popped up about it being caused by a meteor shower. One thing is certain, it was an extremely hot, dry, windy autumn day. 3 other major fires occurred that same day along the shores of Lake Michigan, the biggest being the Peshtigo Fire, which destroyed Peshtigo, Wisconsin, along with some other villages, but was greatly overshadowed by the Chicago Fire that weekend. The Peshtigo Fire killed a staggering 1,200 to 2,500 people and is the deadliest fire in American history, but that is for another video. So what do you guys think caused the Chicago Fire? Was it the sheer dryness of the day, or something a bit more mischievous? Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. The Boston Molasses Disaster. Also known as the Great Boston Molasses Flood, this event occurred on January 15, 1919 in Boston, Massachusetts in the United States. The disaster occurred at the Purity Distilling Company facility. It is not the most deadly event on the list, but because of the sheer weirdness of this one, I decided to place it number 1. The temperature had risen above 40 degrees Fahrenheit on a warm winter day, climbing rapidly from the frigid temperatures of the last few days. At about 12:30 p.m. near Kenny Square, a molasses tank 50 feet tall, 90 feet in diameter with as much as 2.3 million gallons collapsed. Witnesses reported that as it collapsed, they felt the ground shake and heard a roar and a long rumble similar to the passing of an elevated train, then a loud thud followed by a machine gun-like sound when the rivets shot out of the tank. You might be thinking, why do they have so much molasses in storage? Molasses can be used for many things like candy or can also be fermented to produce rum and ethanol. At the time, the stored molasses was awaiting transfer to the purity plant located in Cambridge. The molasses likely began to ferment as it was awaiting transfer, and fermentation can produce carbon dioxide gas that will greatly raise the pressure inside the cylinder. The collapse produced a wave of molasses 25 feet high at its peak, moving at 35 miles per hour. The molasses wave was so strong that it damaged the girders of the nearby Boston Elevated Railway structure and tipped a railroad car momentarily off the tracks. Author Stephen Poleo described how nearby buildings were swept off their foundations and crushed. Several blocks were flooded to a depth of 2 to 3 feet. Poleo quotes a Boston Post report. Molasses waist deep covered the street and swirled and bubbled about the wreckage. Here and there struggled to form. Whether it was animal or human being was impossible to tell. Only an upheaval, a thrashing about in the sticky mass, showed where any life was. Horses died like so many flies on sticky paper. The more they struggled, the deeper in the mess they were ensnared. Human beings, men and women, suffered likewise. The Boston Globe reported that people were picked up by a rush of air and hurled many feet. At its peak, the molasses was moving through the streets at 35 miles per hour. Others had debris hurled at them from the rush of sweet-smelling air. A truck was picked up and thrown into the Boston harbor. Initially, firefighters tried to wash away the molasses with fresh water, but would later find that briny seawater was the only way to cut the hardened surface. Approximately 150 were injured. 21 people and several horses were killed. Some were crushed and drowned by the molasses. The wounded included people, horses, and dogs. Coughing fits became one of the most common ailments after the blast. The courts found the United States Industrial Alcohol Company, who owned the tank, at fault for ignoring the many signs of the structure's instability over the years, including frequent leaks that occurred. What a truly terrifying day that must have been for Boston. Can you imagine just being out in the streets when a 35-mile-per-hour wave of molasses is heading your way? The event has entered Boston local folklore, and for decades afterwards, residents claimed that on hot summer days, you could still smell the molasses throughout the area of the explosion. Those were 6 bizarre tragedies. If you guys enjoyed this video, please help this channel grow by subscribing and liking, and you can expect more new content coming your way every week. Thanks for watching.